Good morning slash afternoon, party people. Welcome to an exciting hump day episode of SJU. I'm here with Eric. I'm here with Kim. We've got some important Netflix news, but I want to say it right up top. Kim wrote a book, people. Kim wrote a GD book, an honest to God book. I believe there's a link in the description. We're going to go talk about it in depth, but if you want to just jump to that, just click the link and start buying the book. And by the end of the show, I want to see it at the top of the charts, people, the top of the charts. I will, Kim, just give us a brief tease. What's the title? What's the pitch?
It is called Why We Love the Matrix.
Hell yeah. Well, we're gonna take the red and the blue pills. We're gonna mash them together and go down that rabbit hole later in the show. But we do have some Netflix news first that we want to get to. Netflix, is it a success? Not enough for capitalism, because it did grow. It grew. It added 3.8 million subscribers in the first quarter of 2021, according to Bloomberg. But that's not enough. You have to grow faster than that. More people, more content for the content gods. They had predicted. Well, this is kind of their own making because they predicted they'd grow by 6 million users, but only added 3.8 million. So that means the stock price tanks and a lot of people make or lose money in ways that I don't fully understand. This marked the weakest start of a year for Netflix since 2013. Wow. Back in the Obama had just been reelected. Optimism was running high and Netflix was not doing well. Maybe people were going outside back then. Not sure. They had a massive 2020. Everyone went in for the pandemic and made sure they renewed their Netflix. But a company's chief financial officer, Spencer Newman, no relation. And I do know that's not how names work, but whatever. He said, quote, "It really boils down to COVID. They're maybe now feeling the effect of people beginning to leave their homes for the first time this year. But speaking of COVID, they couldn't really produce. They had to delay a bunch of shows due to production COVID restrictions. And they did have hits like Bridgerton and Cobra Kai, but new releases kind of faltered. They couldn't rush The Witcher out or the new Stranger Things and stuff like that. So there's more news, but what I want to check in with you guys. What do you make of all this? Is Netflix hitting the saturation point, or can you really just shrug your shoulders and say COVID to the slowing growth of Netflix?
It does feel like in the US, they might be hitting saturation because, I mean, they said a lot how they're kind of almost looking to international more now because there's still places to grow more internationally. It's like, yes, there are plenty of people who don't have Netflix in the US, but it's gotten to that point where it's almost, 20 years ago, like, do you have cable or you don't? Either you've decided you are doing that or you won't. And people will trickle in. But I do feel like, yeah, they might just be hitting that peak of like, it's kind of at that base, that level now. I mean, of course, but if your company want to grow. So it will be interesting.
Faster.
Yes. So I am curious to see kind of how they try to do that. And especially because it looks like international is one thing they're really looking at more.
Yeah, I think, if they're reporting record subscribers for the start of 2020, and we have had a pandemic, which throws all kind of predictions out of the window, it makes sense that it's going to be uneven, the way they pick up subscribers, the numbers of subscribers they pick up, and they still got 3.8 million, right? So and that's in the face of slowed down production on these on their shows.
Yeah,
you almost wonder if it's like they got more than they would have last year. Now they're getting less. Maybe it's like all evening out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they do say that most of their new customers live outside the United States. And yeah, you do see a lot more both international programming, or at least foreign language. Sorry, I'm so American. Like foreign language, international. Like there's like there are other places. But you know what? I'm right. Last I checked, I'm in America. So that's, you guys know what I'm talking about. And they do also make like the same format, but then they'll remake it in like 7 different languages and for 7 different locations and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know. Eventually, there are only so many new people in the world, and the ones that want Netflix have it. There's really no way to do that short of, I mean, they could make shows that make people horny to try to give like a long-term population bump, something like that. But eventually, you just don't have any more customers. But their solution remains the same as ever, continuing the news. make more shows. Netflix plans to spend 17 billion with a B on programming this year. That's up from 12.5 billion last year and 14.8 billion in 2019. So they are just going to try to shovel more coal into the furnace and hope that they pull something, another Stranger Things out. And I do think that that is kind of the gotta contribute to the slow growth. Is I don't think there's anything that's like a must see on Netflix in this last year, save for things that like Bridgerton was a big hit, but they haven't had Stranger Things. Cobra Kai, you know, you're either in or out by the time it hits season 4. They need another big hit. I feel like it's been a while. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I mean, shows like Cobra Kai and Stranger Things, and I mean, they mentioned You as a show that's coming, a new season that's coming up, and The Witcher as driving subscribers.
Sure, The Witcher, yeah.
But if people already have already seen, you know, the early seasons of those shows, is that really going to drive new subscriptions? I'm not sure. But yeah, you're right. They do need another big hit, something new. There are so many other streaming services now and options for customers, subscribers, that that they need to compete. They need to keep upping their game. That's the only way in this market now.
Yeah, that's, we've heard in the past, the reason that they cancel so many shows after it hits season 3 is because it doesn't tend to get more people to watch. Either you're in or you're out at that point. And I don't want to discount Bridgerton, which by all accounts was a huge hit for them, but it does feel like those hits are being more and more spread out. And it was notable to me, The Witcher was a big hit for them, and they're doing spinoffs and whatnot. And they're also, I noticed it's like they're doing a lot of video game shows. I think they're doing Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed. There's one other I'm forgetting. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, because again, they're losing all of like the Disney outside IP, but video game IP, which is not connected usually to a major studio, like a movie or TV studio, is something that is probably a smart call for them to try to be like, we can, if The Witcher was a hit, and I know it was based on a book first, but we can be the home of like cool video game adaptations. So I'm curious again, because that's like, they want Stranger Things, they want these like international hits that like get people like, oh, you haven't seen that show, you have to check it out. And it does seem like that's less and less happening for them. They're just they're there, they got stuff, but not the stuff that's like getting people as excited.
I wonder if this $17 billion programming budget includes the deal they made with Sony to be kind of the first look distributor of Sony theatrical movies. And I mean, that might be their way forward, because I don't have the graph in front of me, but the one that experienced the highest growth in the last year or so was HBO Max. Had a really good last 12 months. And I think that's probably in large part due to the Snyder Cut, the Godzilla versus Kong, the Mortal Kombat coming up, first run theatrical movies where you think, oh, like I would actually pay my $7 to $12 for a ticket for this. So of course I'll keep Netflix going for another month. So maybe their turn to partner with people who make big event films could be a way to keep the train going, keep the money train going.
Yeah, I don't know if sorry if I'm repeating a story I may have told on here recently. I can't remember, but it's like if you Google like a movie, in my case, I was Googling where to find Minari. And it's like one of the first things that comes up because people are searching is Minari on Netflix. It is still this like, and it's not, it's still like this go-to where people are like, is this movie at Netflix? And less, more and more, the answer is no, it's not, because they're not getting these big movies made by other people or just talked about movies in Minari's case. So yeah, I do think you're right, Spencer. It's like, that's why they are making that Sony partnership, which, was both, they'll put Sony movies after theatrical on Netflix, but it's also to partner with Sony on original stuff just made for streaming, because I think they are seeing, which might open the door to some more familiar IP. Maybe there's some Sony video game stuff there. So I think it's like they probably are trying to think about that, because that is the thing that like HBO Max, who are, taking a while to catch up because they didn't have a DC show or a Potter show when they launched. And Disney certainly already has like these big familiar names, these characters, Marvel, Star Wars, worlds you already love. And it's a lot harder. I mean, look, kudos to them on Stranger Things, but it's a lot harder to do that, to be like, you've never heard of this thing and we're going to make it into a big deal. That's tricky. Totally. And I'm all for that, by the way. I don't want it only to be familiar IP, but it is harder and harder to make a splash without that. So I think that's partly where those like partnerships will come into play.
And probably harder to take risks. Like, when they made Stranger Things, it was much easier to kind of put it out there as a risk, I think.
Yeah, but I do think that it is like, well, it depends whose POV you're looking at it from, because when you do have a $17 billion budget, you can't afford to take risks. You'd be like, yeah, screw it. Here, have $40 million to make a show. Just tell me when it's done. I don't have time to watch all this. So I think that they actually are sort of freed up in that way to kind of, but they usually use it to make these like algorithmically driven, super niche shows that'll boost subscribers among divorced housewives 55 to 58 in Upper Peoria. Like, it seems like the shows are so micro targeted that
that's such the funny thing about Netflix, right? Like when Ryan Johnson just made the huge Knives Out deal, and it's like he won't get any notes from Netflix. And that is like their, I know that's a positive and a negative, I think, for them, because I've seen John Landgraf, who heads FX, talk about like the amount of stuff Netflix has and how he's like, there's no way I couldn't watch all those shows as the executive, and they're not either, right? Yeah. It's like it is a blank check and no notes because they don't have time because they make too many things. And there's a good and a bad to that. There's a good of creative freedom. There's a bad of no one's looking to say, oh, maybe you need to make this a little tighter. Maybe you need to make some changes here. And I think that's why we're getting this weird mix on Netflix of like, oh, really, some filmmakers and TV creators are getting to do whatever they want, and there's some really great stuff. And there's a lot of shows that are like meandering, and it feels like they needed notes they didn't get. And so that's the weird thing of like making so much to the point that you probably literally don't have time for oversight.
What a fun job. Finally, now I kind of have to recuse, and maybe we have to all recuse ourselves from this conversation because we make the big fandom bucks, so we don't have to choose between streaming services. And by that I mean we all have group accounts that like the entire office shares for these. So I can't say whether this is affecting me or what I would do personally. Yeah. But do you think that people are just juggling their budgets, and because Netflix is claiming the rise of other streaming services isn't affecting their subscribers, but do you think that's BS? Do you think people are like, well, this month I'm gonna switch to Hulu and HBO?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a phenomenon, isn't it? People switching. That's something that people have written about and observed. People switching services. But definitely I would, if I was on a limited budget, and I'd definitely be ditching, probably, maybe not Netflix, but some of the things, and going to Disney Plus for sure, and Amazon Prime probably.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I don't know if they even believe it themselves that they say that's not a factor, or they just want to say that because especially Disney Plus, who, grew so quickly, more quick than anyone had predicted. I think that, they're basically have like half the subscribers of Netflix, which is super impressive because they've only been around like, less than two full years. And if you're like a young couple with a baby on a tight budget, and that baby's getting to TV watching age, and it's like, okay, we can only afford one streamer. Well, Disney Plus has all those characters. Yeah. So that has to be a factor. Again, it's like, I realize Netflix is still huge. It's still the biggest, and it's still adding people. But that part of that slowdown, I think, is the other streamers in general, but Disney Plus specifically, for that family market, that's really tough hurdle. And I think as time goes on, might become more of an issue for them.
Yeah,
go ahead, Kim.
I was just going to say, as more services kind of increase their variety of content. So at the moment, Netflix has a ton of documentaries and stuff that you can dip into. It's almost like old-fashioned channel surfing, isn't it? It offers a wide breadth of content, and as more services start to diversify, they will start to struggle more, I would have thought.
Yeah. It's fascinating the thought process that goes into their programming decision, not just Netflix, but all of them. I'm thinking, Eric, you had mentioned families making decisions and stuff like that. I heard about how Amazon has cut all funding or ceased developing any children's programming because they already got the parents hooked on Prime, because if you run out of diapers, and I can attest to this, you need diapers fast. You need that free delivery. You need it to show up the next day. They've already got you like, I'm not going to go out to the store to get butt wipes. I'm just going to do this. Or like, they already have parents completely on lockdown. So the kind of things you see on Prime are to get like college kids with like The Boys, and older adults with your Ms. Maisels and stuff like that. Like that is driving their programming decisions, is diapers, basically. So.
But yeah, it's probably valid. I mean, for a long time, I think Amazon's biggest weirdest issue with Prime was messaging. A lot of people had Prime to order stuff and didn't even realize I can watch a bunch of shows and movies. Yeah. But that is probably slowly changing. And yeah, it is a like, hey, I can get things at a nice amount of money, for a reasonable amount of money to my doorstep, and I can watch The Boys. Right. That is a very interesting add-on that if they can get more and more attention on their shows, I think could definitely make them even more of sort of a player in that realm.
Well, speaking of Amazon, I want to go back to the roots when it was just little Jeffrey Bezos with a full head of hair selling books out of his garage. And let's speak to a future billionaire. Kim, tell us about your book.
That is a great segue, and a very wide question. Tell us about your book. I'll show you it. Why
there you go.
There you go. So it's all about, funnily enough, why we love The Matrix. It needed looking at. It's more relevant now, that film, than ever before. But it goes into all the reasons why it's such an enduring film, why it's so influential, why it was important at the time, and still is today. Ask me another question.
Well, is this like a little more details? Like, is this a collection of essays? Is this just like an on the road? You just wrote this on a scroll on amphetamines. Like, what's the book?
She was driving bar to bar, right, about the Matrix.
It is essentially a collection of essays. Yes, Spencer. Like, it's 7 chapters, looking at the origins of the film, the perfect storm, if you like, that led to its creation. And then we go into the 3 major chapters on Neo, Trinity, who is perhaps the most important tritagonist ever in cinema. I argue that in the book. Anyway, and then one on Morpheus, but also how it can be seen in some respects as the villain. So we also lead into Agent Smith in that chapter. And then looking at, how it pioneered the blend of practical stunt wire work that it took from Hong Kong cinema with the kind of groundbreaking visual effects that the film is famous for, and how influential that has been. With Quentin Tarantino was influenced by it. Without The Matrix, I'm not sure we'd have the MCU as it is today, because it led the way for a new kind of superhero film. The X-Men borrowed heavily from it. They did. And there you go.
The Keanu-sance, we have it to thank for the right. Keanu's like 3rd wave of fame and fortune.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
And how, I mean, you mentioned Keanu Reeves, and how, before The Matrix, really, he was, I don't know, he was a bit of a joke, really, wasn't he, as an actor? And then The Matrix made his career.
He's had such interesting ebbs and flows. Yeah. And I remember people were, again, because Speed had been a hit, but it had been a few years before. So when Matrix was coming out, people were like, I don't know about, they're trying to sell me on him. Super cool. I don't know.
Another Johnny Mnemonic. Great.
Yeah. And Johnny Mnemonic had been a bomb.
Reputation of being a bad actor, or let's say a low-key actor, which works perfectly in the role of Neo, for that character.
Yeah, I think that this is a perfect movie. I'm not saying that it is the best movie of all time, but I wouldn't change a single thing about The Matrix, I think. And I still do. I think I saw it a few years ago, and it was just as fascinating, and it didn't age a bit for me. Maybe soundtrack-wise a tiny bit, but that's just because that's been overused by now with Junkie XL and stuff like that. But I think that it's just as revolutionary today, and yes, relevant as it was in 1999. And you don't say that a lot about things from 1999, that's for sure.
No.
So buy that book. Show us the cover again. That'll look great on a shelf behind
Yes.
anyone, as Eric, hint, hint, and you, the viewer, hint, hint, for your zooms. That's beautiful. I love the art.
Oh,
Who did the art?
Shout out to Chris King, who did all the original illustrations for the book.
Yeah, that's super cool. And what's the best place for them to buy it?
You can get it from anywhere you can buy books. If it's your local bookshop, you probably have to order it, but Amazon and all the usual suspects.
Awesome.
I have to find, I'm going to dig up at some point, Kim, and send to you photos I took in either early 99 or even late 98 of a convention appearance they did to promote The Matrix at a dinky little convention in LA with Keanu and Carrie On and the Wachowskis. And it was just like, you'll look at it and you're like, it just looks like they're just talking at like the local, Legion Hall. But they showed some clips and people were getting pretty excited, but no one knew that it was going to be the thing it is.
I would love to see those photos, Eric.
Dig that up somewhere. Yeah.
Well, SJU fans, support one of your own. Buy this book, and let's support it so we can get the follow-up. Why we think the sequels have a few good parts in them. Actually,
I'm sure
Chapter, Spencer. So.
Well, that fourth movie's coming. I'm sure we're gonna have occasion to be discussing Matrix more.
Ooh, high hopes for that fourth one. Oh, please, 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 please be good. Anyways, also like and subscribe to this channel, whatever. And Eric and Roth will be talking about the Falcon Winter Soldier finale on Friday. Yeah, it's the usual, and it's not like a book. And we also have other less important news. We'll go through this quickly before we get to some of your questions. Olivia Colman and Emilia Clarke are joining Marvel Studios' Secret Invasion series in unknown roles. Okay, obviously Olivia Colman is becoming like the new Meryl Streep, like legend, great in everything she's in. How are we feeling about Emilia Clarke these days?
I really like Emilia Clarke. And she said, first of all, she's a very likable presence. Like, she does seem like she should be doing even more comedies, because it's like she's a very sort of like lighthearted, funny person who has amazing expressive eyebrows that she wasn't able to use in Game of Thrones. But I also think she's a very good actress. So it is interesting, to see her kind of back in big franchise realm. Obviously, Terminator was the previous attempt. She also did Solo. So it's funny. She's twice been in like big franchise things that didn't really take off. Not to say we'll never see her again in Star Wars, because anything can happen, but that film itself was not a success. So this is kind of like another, her going into like big franchise realm, but I get it, especially with Marvel, because it's like it just seems like they're doing everything right. So why wouldn't you want to join up with them?
Yeah, I echo what you say about her and comedy. Did you see Last Christmas?
No, I have actually really. I do want to see Last Christmas.
No,
it's so underrated, that film. But don't watch it till next Christmas.
Okay, watch Last Christmas next Christmas. Got it.
And yeah, I think she'd be. You're right. It's funny, you forget, or it kind of went out of my mind that she's already in Star Wars, a huge franchise. But I think she'd be awesome in this, and I think she'll. Well, I don't know if she will be a villain, but I'd like to see her as a villain.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool too. For me, she's on thin ice. She's on thin franchise ice, because I did not appreciate her performance in Solo was fine. I thought that was just a total dud in the Terminator movie. But maybe don't have her playing like a all-American badass, and either make her a villain or have her do some comedy. And Game of Thrones season 8, look, not her fault. Whatever, that's a wash. I'm just saying. This one will tell me a lot about her future.
Wow,
I'm sure she's waiting. I'm sure she's very concerned about.
I'll just say that like it's pretty. These casting choices are getting a lot of excitement. So it is one of those things where Secret Invasion is one of so many Marvel shows. It's easy to like not think about it, but I think they're getting people now like, ooh, and we don't know anything about what they're playing. And again, it doesn't even matter, because you're just like, okay, we got Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn, and now these are the people joining the show. So suddenly I think you're getting a lot more pre-excitement about this show.
Moving on, we have some Quibi erasure happening, as Eric mentioned. Roku, who bought the Quibi library for $20 and a stick of gum, is rebranding all the Quibi content as Roku Originals. I can't believe that. That's why not just own the Queebs, or is there too much stink on the name? Um, I wonder if you can still. Are you supposed to tilt your television 90 degrees to a different side, or can it detect when you're looking at it like this and it'll spin around? Are you excited to watch all of Quibi on your Roku, and will that work on your TV?
First of all, do you have Roku, Kim? Do you guys have Roku?
No, I don't think it's a thing over here yet. I could be wrong, but I'm, if it is, it's very low profile.
Who's going to get you the Quibi content?
It's there. I just Googled it.
Oh, you did? Oh, there you go.
Oh, right. Let me get my Roku stick.
This is going to get them on the map. Honestly, I will check out some of these shows. There were a couple I was curious about, but I wasn't going to pay for Quibi and watch it on my phone. So I'll watch them on there. And, they're launching some things that Quibi never launched because they had produced them, but they didn't. Like there's that DC and Marvel documentary the Russos produced, which will debut on Roku. So it is funny. I was just watching on HBO that documentary about QAnon, and they had a clip from a Quibi 60-minute show, and it threw me so much to see the Quibi logo. And I think
it's just things so specifically,
right? And I think that's why Roku did it, right? They're like, we can't use the Quibi name. we just have to pretend it didn't exist.
Are they going to show them in longer bursts, or are they going to stick to the short form format?
Yeah, will it be 7 minutes and then you have to go back to the menu and pick the next one?
Yeah,
right. Can you watch was it what was the Liam Hemsworth one, The Deadliest Game?
Yeah.
Can you watch that just as a movie?
That'd be nice if they can re-edit it, cut out the previously on or whatever, just so
right.
watch for more than 10 minutes at a time.
You'll get me more Roku.
Yeah, you're right. Look, it's free. Roku's a very good streaming box if you need something to make your TV a smarter TV. And it had like Reno 911 sketches on there. So sure, if I'm paying literally $0 extra for it, I'll take it, and I will go back into the Queebs and see what madness awaits. All right. Let's skip How I Met Your Mother because I've never seen that show. I hear it's good.
It was
How
good.
I Met Your Father is coming, but I have yet to meet the mother, so we'll circle back to that later. Let's get into the chat. Adam Hubbard asked, do you think we'll see an Eternals trailer sooner rather than later if Chloe Zhao wins at the Oscars this weekend? Do you think they're waiting to see from Academy Award winning director Chloe Zhao before they drop the trailer? Is that a thing studios do? Maybe.
I mean, look, Marvel, again, people sometimes they'll ask about like, why haven't they started promoting this, and this? I'm like, because they've got 10 other things to promote first. So much is debuting before Eternals. It doesn't shock me they haven't started promoting yet. But I actually think that if she does win the Oscar, I could see that. Like, put out they haven't even put out any official photos yet or anything. So maybe not the trailer, maybe a poster, maybe something. But
I think definitely because COVID.
Oh yeah.
Because COVID.
Because COVID. As we said with we were talking about before we started filming, but with Netflix, that's you can say everything because COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ombre de California. Wow, this is a huge question. You have the money they used to produce the Lord of the Rings series, which, refresh my memory, is like some hundreds of millions of dollars.
Because it was so crazy because just getting the rights, I'm forgetting these amounts, but they were just all astronomical because just getting the rights was like 250 million.
I think it's like a billion, almost $1 billion all in for a season, the rights and a season of this show.
Right.
So what would you do? What would you produce with $1 billion?
Wow.
I mean, I want to say something really altruistic, but I don't think that's the answer they're looking for.
Oh, you have to make a media product. You can't give it away. I'm sorry, those are the rules.
Okay, all right. I first of all, I use that money if I can only use it for media, then I use that money to help fix the Friday 13th rights issues. They just get everyone happy and in line. And make sure the writer's happy and the studio's happy, and so we can make a new Friday 13th movie. I don't know if that will take all billion, but I'm just saying that whatever it does take, I will use to make Friday 13th Part 13. The next movie would be Part 13, guys. I gotta do it happen. So there you go.
There was a book I loved when I was a kid that's just popped into my head called Barmy Jeffers and the Quasimodo Walk. I would launch that.
I think we could get that for less than $1 billion.
No, I'll commission some sequels, Spencer,
okay.
and turn it into a money spinning franchise.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll have to look into. Say that one more time.
Barmy Jeffers and the Quasimodo Walk.
Barmy Jeffers and the Quasimodo Walk.
Sounds like a rad band too.
Yeah, sounds like a good
Maybe
punk band.
that money will pay to put together a rad band as well.
Yeah, I would go. No one has tried this yet. A sci-fi author, Ian M. Banks, wrote these, I don't know, like 10 or 12 books called the Culture series, the Culture franchise. And it's just, I read these and I go, wow, this would look cool, but wow, this is unfilmable. It's about this like far future, completely utopian society where human beings kind of live like as, benign, like a benign parasite on the backs of these enormous artificial intelligence spaceships that talk to each other and have their own society and then come into contact with things outside, like alien races outside. It's like Star Trek times a million, just in every conceivable way, in scale and scope, in the kind of things and details. Like one entire book is basically about like 3 spaceships talking to each other and like making plans. So it doesn't seem like anybody is going to film this anytime soon, but it was a very popular sci-fi book series that ran from like the 80s to fairly recently. I think he's passed at this point. But man, those were cool, and it's a good read. And yes, give me $1 billion, and you will see it on your screen in James Cameron 5D. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Jeffrey Yelverton asks, can Game of Thrones actors have a career after the show? It's interesting. Yes. Yeah, who's had the biggest post Game of Thrones pop?
I mean, it's funny tying it all together into things we've talked about previously today. There's going to be multiple Stark clan in Eternals because Rob and John are both in the Eternals. So Marvel's certainly looking at
Rob Stark. He's the bodyguard. That was a popular show afterwards, right?
It was. I think the answer is, I mean, first of all, of course, it's such a huge cast. But yeah, I think I see those people all doing plenty. I was thinking a few years ago, someone was pointing out that the Walking Dead when Walking Dead was huge, weren't getting as many movie roles as you might expect, and I don't know why that was versus Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones, there's a lot of good people.
That's like Lost as well, with some of the major characters in that. Their careers kind of floundered after an initial kind of trial period in movies.
But I think that's still kind of an old way of thinking of like, well, if you made it big in TV, then now you got to level up to movies, where it's kind of the opposite these days. Like if you're a movie star, you're hoping that you can get a limited series on HBO or Netflix or something like that. So like, I don't know. I feel like you've reached that. There's nowhere to go but down after something like Game of Thrones. Honestly,
it's a tough one. Yeah. Oh, can we throw in Jim's question that just popped into there?
Sure. Jim 1 asks, speaking of Emilia Clarke, do you think we'll ever see the unaired original Game of Thrones pilot where Daenerys was played by another actress? There aren't clips of this? You can't see this? I've never seen it, but
there's random images, and my answer is no. I think it's the same reason that they'll never release the Eric Stoltz footage from Back to the Future. They gave us that tiny little silent clip.
Yeah.
It's almost a respect thing because they don't want to be crappy and be like, we didn't think this person was right. Here, watch them.
Right.
So I think there is an amount of that. Because I saw that actress, Tamsin Merchant, she actually just did, like, for the first time ever, spoke at length about her experience filming that and everything. But it's like, it's such a weird, uncomfortable thing. And I can only think compared to Back to the Future, where Eric Stoltz is demonstratably a very good actor, but I can also see why he wasn't right for Marty McFly. But they also think it'd be kind of Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. They don't want to be like, see, weren't we right to replace him months into shooting? So I think there is an amount of that, but I wouldn't be shocked if like a documentary one day gives us a clip or two. That's how these things seem to happen.
And maybe if we all campaign for it, Snyder Cut style.
Warner Media, they did
the OG Daenerys. Yeah,
they bend the knee once, so we'll see.
Well, the only pressure campaign we're running here is #Why We Love the Matrix. It's already been released, so step 1 is done, and now you have to show your thanks and get on there and buy it on hardcover, put it behind on your Zoom shelf, buy it on Kindle so you can read it on the go. Just buy it. All right. Kim deserves better. Thank you guys for joining us. Eric, Kim, thank you so much. You'll be back on Friday for the finale review with Roth
Yes.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And we'll be back shortly after that. Don't hold your breath. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.
Cool.
Good show. Good show.
That was fun, everybody.
Yeah, congrats, Kim. I hope
Yeah,
we,
congratulations.
yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.